Why does love make the human being happy? It is an activity we often do not see as such because it moves from within out, embracing the other one. With it, we let our inner being flow out, hence love's healing and blessing of life. Creativity may be of the most intimate nature. It does not have to become tumultuously visible. When someone is hunched over a book and the impressions from it depress him, overwhelm him, he will gradually become depressed. When, however, the reading of a book brings picture to mind, when there is a creative activity that makes for happiness, it is something quite similar to becoming pale when one is anxious about coming events. Then the blood flows inwards in order to strengthen us, so that what comes at us from the outside can find a counterbalance within. With the feeling of anxiety, inner activity is alerted to outer activity. Becoming aware of an inner activity is healing. Had the human being been able to feel the activity of the inner formation in the arising of the eyes out of the undifferentiated basic organ, then he would have perceived a feeling of well-being. He was not conscious, however, of that happening. Instead of bringing a worn-out human being to a sanitarium, it were far better to bring him into an environment where he would be happy, at first so happy, but also physically happy. When you put a human being into an environment of joy, in which with every step he takes, an inner feeling of joy awakes, that it is which will make him healthy. When, for example, he sees sunbeams streaming through the trees and perceives the colors and scents of flowers. This, however, a person must himself be able to feel, so that he himself can take the problem of his health in hand. Every step should stir him to inner activity. Paracelsus gave us the beautiful saying, "It is best that everyone should be himself, by himself, and no one else." It is already a limitation of what makes us healthy if we must first go to another person. Here we are confronted with outer impressions that for a short while appear to help, but finally lead to hysteria. When one considers the problem so, one comes upon other healthy thoughts. There are people and doctors today, especially lay doctors, who battle against the doctors. Medicine does indeed need to be reformed, but this cannot come about through these battles. Rather must the facts of spiritual science themselves reach into science. Spiritual science exists, but not to further dilettantism. There are people today who have the itch to cure others. It is of course easy to find this or that illness in a person. So somebody finds this or that organ in a person different from the way it appears in another. Or a person does not breathe as one possessed with a curing fever thinks all people should breathe. So for this a cure gets invented. Shocking, most shocking, for it is not at all a matter of directing one's efforts at a routine concept of health. It is easy to say that this or that do not make for health. Consider someone who has lost one of his legs. He is sick, certainly sicker than one who breathes irregularly, whose lungs are affected. It is not a question of healing this person. It would be foolish to say, you must see to it that this person gets a leg again. Just try to get him to grow another leg. What really matters is that life for this person be made as bearable as possible. This is so in gross, but also in more subtle conditions. It is a fact that one can find a small flaw in each human being. Also, what often matters here is not to clear up the flaw, but rather, despite the human being's flaw, to make his life as bearable as possible. Think of a plant, the stem of which is wounded. The tissue and the bark grow around the wound. So is it also with human beings. The force of nature maintains life as they grow around the flaw. Especially lay doctors fall victim to the error of wanting to cure everything. They would like to cultivate one kind of health for all human beings. There is as little of the one kind of health as there is one kind of normal human being. Not only are illnesses individual, but also health. The best we can give to the human being, be we physician or counselor, is to give him the firm frame of mind that he feels himself comfortable when he is healthy, uncomfortable when he is sick. Today, this is not at all so easy in our circumstances. He who understands the matter of health will mostly fear such sicknesses as do not come to expression through fatigue and pain. It is therefore detrimental to sedate oneself with morphine. It is healthy when health brings zest, illness brings apathy. This healthy way of living we can acquire only when we make ourselves inwardly strong. This we do when we oppose our complicated conditions with strong inner activity. The feverish search for health will cease only then when human beings no longer strive for health as such. The human being must learn to feel and perceive whether he is healthy and to know that he can easily put up with a flaw in health. This is only possible through a strong world conception that is effective right down into the physical body. This world outlook makes for harmony. This, however, is only possible through a world concept that is not dependent upon outer impressions. The spiritual scientific world concept leads man into regions that he can only reach if he is inwardly active. One cannot read a spiritual scientific book as one reads other books. It must be so written that it evokes one's own activity. The more one must struggle, the more there is between the lines, the healthier it is. This is so only in the theoretical matters, but spiritual science can be effective in all areas. What we call spiritual science exists in order to become effective as a strong spiritual movement. It calls forth concepts that are provided with the most powerful energies so that human beings can take a stance against what faces one. Spiritual science would like to give an inner life that extends right into the limbs, into the blood circulation. Then will every individual perceive his health in his feeling of joy, in his feeling of zest and satisfaction. Almost every dietary regime is worthless. That the other fellow tells me that this or that are good for me is of no consequence. What matters is that I find satisfaction when taking my food. The human being must have understanding for his relation to this or that food. We should know what the spiritual process is that goes on between nature and us. To spiritualize everything, that's what becoming healthy means. Perhaps it is currently thought that for the spiritual scientist, eating is something to which he is indifferent, that he gorges himself, devoid of understanding for it. To become aware of what it means to partake of a part of the cosmos, a part that has been drenched with sunlight, to know of the complete spiritual relationship in which our environment stands, to savor it not only physically, but also spiritually, frees us from all sickening disgust, from all sickening encumbrances. Thus we see that to direct this striving for health onto the right tracks sets humanity a great challenge. But spiritual science will be strong. It will transform every human being who dedicates himself to it, bringing him to the attainment of what for himself is a normal pattern. This is at the same time a noble striving toward freedom that comes out of spiritual science and makes man his own master. Every man is an individual being from the standpoint of his characteristics as well as of his states of health and illness. We are placed in lawful relation to the world and must learn to know our situation therein. No outer power can help us. When we find this strong inner stance, then only are we complete human beings from whom nothing can be taken. But it also holds that nobody can give us anything. Nevertheless, we shall find our way in health and in illness, because we have a strong inner stance within ourselves. This secret, too, of all healthy striving has been expressed by a spirit, an eminently healthy thinking and healthy feeling spirit. He tells us how the harmonized human being unerringly goes his way. It was Goethe who, in his poem, Orphic Primal Words, says, "As on the day that to the world bestowed thee, the sun stood high to greet the planet's sphere, thou didst thenceforth thrive ever on and on, according to the law that brought thee here. So must thou be, canst not from thee escape. The sibyls and the prophets spoke thy fate. Not time nor power can destroy the mold, when form once cast doth livingly unfold.